the Spot Track Podcast, talking sports contracts, the salary cap, and business of sports.
Today's edition of the Spot Track Podcast is presented by Authentic Audio Productions. Visit AuthenticAudioPro.com today for a one-stop shop update to your audio solution. Elevate your podcast, have content created for you, bring in a show host, everything you need, professional services and tools available. Again, visit AuthenticAudioPro.com. My name is Mike Ginnitti. It is Wednesday, September 25th, jumping ahead a little early to this week because we haven't talked NBA in a long time, and I have one of the biggest NBA gurus from a financial standpoint in the industry. That is Keith Smith. We're going to break down some of the bigger storylines from this past offseason that is on its last leg. We're here. Preseason is around the corner. Teams have begun to practice. Rosters are becoming a real thing. Finalizations are just around the corner, and then we'll get to some real basketball to see if the Boston Celtics can reign supreme again. Certainly have the roster. They did make a few changes, as did many teams. We're going to highlight some of the bigger ones coming up right now. Keith, you're back, which means the NBA must be back because we kind of let you do your thing for the whole summer and dive into all the numbers and then write about it for 6 weeks or so. And I think we're at a good point now where we can look back at all the work you've done across the league and just sort of digest it and maybe pull out some of the greatest hits. So I appreciate you coming back.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're media day was yesterday for Boston. Denver's doing theirs today. They get to open a week earlier than everybody else because they're off to Abu Dhabi for the preseason. So they get a week because they lose quite a bit of time with all the travel back and forth from there. So they're headed off. That's the real last thing the Celtics needed after
really?
A long playoff run and then 3 guys playing in the Olympics. But it is what it is. And and then everybody else will get open up at the beginning part of next week. So we're here. The NBA season is cranking up. A little over a week, we'll have preseason games.
I gave you some homework for this. It wasn't bad homework. I think it's probably something you could have just railed off the top of your head because you've been diving into this stuff now for so long. But basically, we're going to talk about your 5 greatest moments from the offseason from a financial perspective. And before we get there, grade this offseason. Something I love doing, grading, right? But you've been in a lot of them now. You've been through a lot of them now. This one seemed, from the outside looking in, a little bit on the quieter side, a little bit flatter. But prove me wrong. Is that how it seemed to you?
No, I'm in agreement with you on that. I would say it's let's grade it on a withdraw, like pass fail level. This is probably more of a withdraw fail than anything, because there was not those huge blockbuster trades, and I think we were really spoiled last year because we had Damian Lillard daily updates. In the thing I coined it the Dames of Our Lives because it was there every day, just like Days of Our Lives, which I think my mom might be the only one still watching. I don't know. But it's those were on a daily. Then we had the James Harden stuff that all dragged right up to the beginning of camps and then all the way into just the very start of the season with Harden. We didn't have that this summer. We basically teams finished their work early and moved on. And what we saw was, and this is going to be kind of a running theme through a handful of these teams we talk about, the new restrictions fully hit with the tax aprons under the new CBA. We had a year ago, we had I like to call it the get your books in order year, where it was, hey, we're going to give you a year. Most teams did that. A handful of teams like Boston and Phoenix and Milwaukee said, great, one more year to load up. Let's do it and let's go. Then it worked out in the Celtics case, great. Worked out okay for Milwaukee and Phoenix, but not exactly where they wanted it to go. And then this year, though, the full weight of all those apron restrictions and luxury tax, penalties and all that is really dropping in on the team. So it was, I think you add all that together, that led to a somewhat lackluster free agency period with trades and player movement and the like, but there were still a handful of big moves that went down.
Okay. Before we look back, is there anything left to come? I know we've got some rookie extensions still kind of hanging in the balance, but what about like veteran players? Is there any storyline sitting out there that you think still could come to fruition in the next 6 weeks or so?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The rookie scale extensions, that'll continue for about another month. That's right up until just before the start of the season. Any veteran players in the NBA who have more than 1 year left on their contract, they have a deadline of the same time just before the start of the regular season to do an extension. One of the big ones came off the board last week with Joel Embiid. We're all kind of waiting on that. That was honestly probably the last big extension that we're kind of waiting on. There's still a handful of others that are out there, and we'll see. I don't necessarily expect any more of those. What I expect to see is guys who are maybe in the last year of their contract. We may see something happen there, like a guy like Brandon Ingram, for example. Right. We may see him extended or maybe traded. And we're kind of at a point where I think if a team was going to trade for him, they'd like to do it and have then the ability to maybe extend him. So that puts kind of like a early trade point on there. Maybe that doesn't go all the way to the trade deadline because that would come with a 6-month restriction on giving him the kind of extension he wants. So we'll see where that one goes. But yeah, for the most part, I think we're down to that. And then we got rookie scale options being picked up, guarantees. Scott and I are living in your world of processing hundreds of transactions. We're just running through because there's just in the NBA now because of affiliate player rights and the like. They do all these sign guy, waive them the same day, sign another guy, waive him, and then eventually they land on the guys they bring to camp. So that's the world we're living in right now.
Okay, let's get into it, sir. You've got five items sitting there in front of you. What's the first NBA offseason storyline you want to highlight here?
Yeah, and I did this because we didn't have the kind of massive individual player movement. I did this by teams. Cool. I thought because there's a really interesting dynamics with a lot of these teams. First story, I'm going to stick close to home, close to my personal heart. The Celtics locked in everybody. They brought back all but 2 players from last year's team. They were replaced by a rookie, and what right now looks like will probably be an open roster spot. And then anybody else who was either a free agent or extension eligible got a new contract. They extended Jason Tatum and Derek White. Drew Holiday was extended at the tail end of last season. They also, Kristaps Porzingis got an extension last year. So the Celtics are in a spot where just in the last, if we really go by kind of year, meaning the 2023 offseason through the 2024 offseason, Jaylen Brown, Sam Hauser, Drew Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis, Peyton Pritchard, Jason Tatum, Derek White all got extensions, and Xavier Tillman, Luke Cornett, all got in Nehemias Queta all got new contracts there. So that's basically they said, hey, we like the guys we have. Let's try to keep them all, and they're keeping them all to a tune of what, if it goes the way it looks like, will be the most expensive team we've ever seen in the NBA.
Yeah, it's just mind-boggling to look at the multi-year breakdown of that team because it's crazy this year, right? I think the top 3 players right now account for over $100 million, and it's going to almost double within 3 seasons. And by the way, there's a lot of teams in that boat that have 3 to 4 players that are going to go well over the salary cap threshold and into tax threshold. So it's just kind of how the game works. You mentioned a lot of players. That's kind of the point with Boston, right? Is that they have an 8-man team right now that they love, that they want to continue to rotate from a depth perspective. I assume you agree with these moves and that you think this team can actually be in contention for the next 2 to 3 to 4 seasons, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I did a deep dive a couple weeks ago for the site where one of the things I wrote about is the Celtics are letting tomorrow's problems be tomorrow's problems. They're awesome right now. They are locking into everybody right now. This is the idea behind, we want a championship. We do not want to be the next team that won a title and then started tearing down right away. We want to lock in. Complicating factor kind of hovering over all of this is the teams for sale. The NBA as a league and then as a whole of 30 ownership groups, and Celtics included, have a real desire to see that the team go for? Record-setting price. They want to see them push somewhere into like the $6 billion range is what they're hopeful of, because then they can turn around and tell the two expansion teams, hey, we know you're not the Celtics, but we need like $5 billion each, because it's maybe $4 billion for your value and then $1 billion apiece to buy in to the club here. That's your kind of buy-in fee. So that's going to come over. We don't know where ownership's going to go after that, as far as are we cool with paying this team, between salary and tax penalties, $500 million a year over the next few years. My guess is you're going to see them look the same this year. If they win or in contention again, which means, in the finals or very competitive East finals, then probably run it back for the most part again, one more season. And then after that, that's where changes will start to come, because one, you have the expense, which that's something I know sports fans love when owners cry poor mouth and, we can't afford to keep everybody. But I think the other part of it is there's with the new second apron rules, there are real roster restrictions that come, and it's going to be harder to backfill guys. So Al Horford, if he retires and moves on, you can't just get another Al Horford, because it's not going to be possible, but while keeping everybody else. So that's going to be the thing we'll be watching with the Celtics here. It's really, I think it's probably about a two-year window with the group as structured, and then we'll see what it looks like from there.
It's wild. It's a lot of money on the books. There's no question about it. You're not suggesting, by the way, that the league and the Celtics are colluding to sell this team to make sure that everybody else's pockets stay full, are you? I wouldn't think that.
I don't know. I mean, we're all gung-ho for expansion, and then all of a sudden the Celtics were for sale, and now the expansion train has slowed down a little bit. So, I'm not. I mean, heck, I'll call it that. I'll call it collusion. I think they're all colluding. I think this is a 30 owners in one league. I think they all have a collective interest in seeing one of the league's marquee franchises sell for as much as it can, because that is maybe the literal definition of a rising tide lifts all boats, right?
No question. And it's good business, even though it's dirty business, and that's just sort of the way sports are going and maybe have always been. So, yeah. All right. Number 2, hit me.
All right. I'm going to go to another team that is wildly expensive. The Minnesota Timberwolves, another team that's embroiled in an ownership dispute. We don't know where that's going to go. But the Timberwolves they're wildly expensive, but in a slightly different way from Boston, because one, they're not champions, and two, they are locked into a lot of guys for a lot of money with a little bit of an uncertainty around some of those guys. Anthony Edwards, Karl-Anthony Towns, Jaden McDaniels locked in for the next 4 to 5 years apiece. No real issues with any of their individual contracts. But Rudy Gobert is kind of hanging out there with one more big year left. What does it look like with him? This team is, I think people would still be surprised. I think if you ask people who are the most expensive teams in the league, I think almost everybody knows Phoenix is. It's probably top. And I think they would go to, well, probably Boston. Then they might maybe think about Milwaukee. They'd probably go to Philly and New York, and maybe still think the Lakers, and maybe even the Warriors and Clippers, and teams that have historically been expensive. No, it's the Minnesota Timberwolves that are the second most expensive team in the league. They are $17 million over the second apron. That puts them at about $34.7 million over the luxury tax. And why this is so interesting is they have never, ever, ever lived in this territory. All of those other teams, they've been expensive at other points in their franchise runs. Minnesota's paid the tax a few times, but never like this. Never to we're one of the most expensive teams. And that's so interesting to me. Much like the Celtics, they got there by locking in all their own guys. But now where does it go? Where does this go? And I've been saying it for a while. They have Karl-Anthony Towns, Rudy Gobert, and Naz Reid. Reid, kind of an ascendant player. One of those three will not be on the team next year. Reid and Gobert can both be free agents. Maybe one of them leaves via that route. Maybe they trade Karl-Anthony Towns if the season doesn't go the way they want it to. One of those three guys isn't going to be there, and that's going to be the beginning of the cost-cutting process for the Timberwolves. They are not built to sustain this level of spending for too long.
It's a great call to bring this team up because, again, they're underrated, even though they just had one of the better years in their franchise's history. And this is not just an expensive roster, but I think everybody would agree an unbelievably talented roster. And yet I think you coined the phrase somewhat flawed still, right? There's still something that seems off with this roster.
Yeah.
Do you believe though that they're just going to roll into 2024-25 as is, or is this one of those teams that could be shaken up at the last minute just because we have to do something for not just this year, but maybe for the next couple of seasons?
Yeah, I think they're fine for now. Okay. This is a team I'll have eyes on. If they are merely a good team and not a true title contender by the time we get to the trade deadline, I think then you'll see them do something. Maybe it'll be, hey, we have a sense Gobert or Reed may leave. Let's get out in front of that and move them before that becomes, out of a situation that's out of our hands. Let's get out in front of that. Maybe it is, we've got these three bigs, but what we really need is another wing that can come in here. Let's do a little bit of a rebalancing trade. But I think because they are very good, I think they rightly so believe, hey, we're right there with Dallas and Denver at the top of the conference and Oklahoma City. Mm-hmm. Why not just see what it looks like? Let's see what this team looks like as built, as structured, and then we'll go from there. So, but trade deadline, certainly next summer, absolutely we'll be all eyes on them because it's just not going to be the same group.
I would imagine if you surveyed, 20 to 25 NBA experts looking at this current multi-year view of the Minnesota Timberwolves, I think the general population would just assume that Gobert falls off of this roster. Is that how you see this? And secondly, he's got a 46 and change player option next season. Is he still revered as a max player at 32 years old? Is he the kind of guy that can just opt out and assume there's going to be 7 or 8 max offers sitting there for him?
Well, it depends on who you ask. It feels like half the league would say, no, he stinks. He's barely a minimum player. And I don't understand why that is the mindset. Now, I don't think that's a single person in a front office or a single coach. And if you ask Shaq, he's barely an NBA player and should be, the world's tallest soccer goalie. But Rudy Gobert is really good. Yeah. He's still a, super impactful defensive player of the year type defender. I think what Minnesota would love to have happen with him is, hey, opt out of that and let's knock that down to 30-ish million a year. We'll lock in for 90 to 120 in guaranteed money, but we can't have it at 45, 50 plus million a season. We need to knock that number down by a third or by a half, ideally to put us in a spot where now we're more sustainable. I wonder if, I don't know where he's at. I don't know if he's like, well, wait a minute. I can still, there's going to be, now this is the blend of where's the player at? Where's the league at? There's not a ton of cap space next summer. Everybody thinks because new TV deal. Well, remember they capped the growth year to year of the salary cap at 10%. And even in 10% jump, because so many teams have locked in a long-term money via extensions across the entire league, there's just not a ton of cap space out there. I only project about 4 teams have cap space, and none of them have like the $50 million single signing max cap space. So that's where Gobert and his side need to be really smart. If the Wolves are saying, hey, we can lock in for basically the remaining super productive years of your career, let's do it. He should probably do that. But we'll see. I'm very curious, to see how this one plays out, because he's like right on that tipping point of not being that guy anymore. And that's a hard thing for an athlete to admit to themselves of, yeah, I should probably take a pay cut. To me, that generally happens a year after everybody knows they're not at that level anymore. Okay.
Let's just say the agent's doing some wink feelers right now. Okay. Because Minnesota's already expressed interest in keeping him on a quieter contract, as you've, I think, correctly projected here. And Gobert and his camp still believe that there's a team or two out there that will max him out for his defensive skills. What's the approach? Is it trade him at this deadline so that the rights transfer? Or are you going to have to coax him into opting into that player option so that you can move him so that, because obviously free agency is not, the cap space, acquiring via cap space is not going to be applicable. So what is the move? Is it an earlier trade, or is it something that can still happen at the final hour?
Yeah, I would probably look to, if they felt like the lesser contract is not the way it's going to go, I would look to move him.
Yeah.
I would look to move him. Now, let me put a caveat on that. We hit like trade deadline time and they're awesome, and it's like we might win the title, then I let the year play out and I figure it all out after, right? Because they've never won a championship. I'm certainly not going to be, well, for future financial reasons, we had to do this because there's no quicker way to get run out of town. What I wonder too is, how does Glenn Taylor ownership versus Mark Lowry, Alex Rodriguez ownership feel about that? And where is Tim Connolly? Because Tim Connolly kind of somewhat quietly, I think, in the general sports world, but very loudly in the NBA world, he only extended by one more year to run the front office. And there's a lot of stuff out there where he's like, if this ownership stuff's still going, he's probably going to bounce and go run another team. So what you have to wonder is, he's the guy who invested everything into trading for Rudy Gobert. Well, if there's a world where it's like he's not going to be here and we're going to have new owners that didn't necessarily fully green light that, then maybe everybody's like, just let it move on. We're going to figure out another way forward. So there's just a lot of questions with them. That's why I wanted to bring them up.
Yeah, they're fascinating. And you're right. They could just quiet all of this by just being the second best team in the West in the middle of January, and there's really no way out before it. So, all right, number 3.
All right, I went with the Denver Nuggets because this is a team I think we've been working together long enough now. I tend to try to take a more positive approach in my coverage of things. I look on the bright side. When people accuse me of, man, you like every signing and trade for every team, I'm like, well, because you're going to find 100 people who hate them all. I don't mind being the guy on the other side who looks for the bright side. I'm going to kill the Nuggets here. They are bleeding talent.
Yeah.
I don't blame them for losing Bruce Brown a year ago. When they lost Bruce Brown, they didn't have the means to match the contract he got from the Indiana Pacers. They just couldn't. They didn't. And that wasn't a financial thing. That was a NBA bird rights rules and all that other stuff that goes into it. They did not have the ability to pay him that much. Losing Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is, to me, that's like inexcusable. This team is a title contender. You have right now the best player in the world, and Nikola Jokic. You should be doing everything you can to keep a title contender around that guy for at least the next few years. Now, someone kind of counter and say, well, they offered Caldwell-Pope the same deal as he got from Orlando. Cool, beat it. You had no reason to not beat that deal. And some folks have countered with me when I've said this in the past. Well, but then they wouldn't have Dario Saric or Russell Westbrook. Okay. And like, where are we going?
That's a sentence, huh?
Yeah, right. Like, that's like, sure. And my whole thing is like, you still could have had Saric and Westbrook. You just could have had them on 1-year minimum deals.
Right.
I don't know who else was offering them more than that. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there was somebody, but I don't think so. So my thing is, it's not been one big mistake for the Nuggets. It's been little cuts here, little cuts here, little cuts here that have caused them to bleed out some talent. And when they had Caldwell-Pope, this was the best starting 5 in the league with Jokic and Murray and Gordon and Porter and Caldwell-Pope. You were in a terrific spot. Now you're replacing them with maybe Christian Brown. We'll see. But then who replaces him as the 6th man? Where are we going with this? And this is a team that just, quite frankly, they no longer feel kind of as certain as maybe they did previously. Then you get into, they locked into a whole bunch of money for Jamal Murray. Yeah. And I feel really confident in, let me rephrase. They had to do it because you couldn't mess around. It was going to get too messy if you started trying to play games with him. So it wasn't the wrong decision. I say it was the right decision. I would also feeling confident that 2 years from now, that's probably a pretty questionable contract. And that could be as soon as this season. He's had injury issues. He struggled to stay on the court. He was terrible in last season's playoffs. He was awful over the summer in the Olympics to the point of basically being invisible. I don't know what's going on in Denver, but I just don't like it. And this is where our kind of your football, baseball more, our worlds cross over. I don't want to hear the Kroenke family say they don't have the money.
Yeah.
You own multiple sports teams. You own Walmart. You're fine. Like, I don't want to hear that it's a money thing. Like, that's, every time I look at one of those billionaire lists, I feel like I see 7 versions of their family names on that list. So, like, I don't want to hear any about poor small market Denver Nuggets and, we just don't have the money. Like, that's crazy to me that they've tried to use the apron as an excuse for being cheap. And that's really all it is.
All right. I'm gonna come back with a different angle here because it's not positive, by the way. At the beginning of the offseason, when Denver just kind of went through, I don't know, a weird iteration, right? Last season was weird for them, and I think a lot of it was injury based, and maybe some of it was roster construction based. I actually thought for a moment that the team was just going to realize that they had to step back a little bit and clean the clock a little bit and reset a lot of things to make another full impact run with Jokic, right? Because he certainly deserves that. He's at the 29 year where it's going to start to get funky, right? Who knows how long this guy's going to play? It just feels like he's going to retire early. He's one of those guys. So I just thought they were doing the right thing with a quick reset, and that meant a bunch of players might leave. And I didn't think that meant anything with Jamal Murray, Keith. And then they extended Jamal Murray. And you're right. It's the right business move because that's just what the NBA teams have to do now, right? You have to get it on the books and you have to have blind faith. But I think there was a world where this could have been a quick dead cap year for them, where it could have just been, let's take it down. Let's be an 8 seed. Let's let Jokic just have a selfish year so that we can replenish the pot a little bit and then make a big run from every angle, trade and everything next offseason. Is that not how NBA teams operate, Keith? Because that's how all the other sports that I cover specifically, that's how great teams remain great for long periods of time. They usually take 1, maybe sometimes 2 years to just dial back on 60 to 70% of their resources, keeping the stars intact and kind of keeping everybody informed. But to me, the Murray extension is going to be the nail in this franchise's coffin, and I think you feel that way too.
Yeah, it's interesting. The NBA has generally not operated these teams that end up stretching a 3 or 5 year window into like a decade-long window. It's generally because they have a transcendent superstar, which Denver obviously does in Jokic. And then they just kind of keep refreshing the pieces around them. But it's every single year you make sure you got the right mix. There's rarely we took a step back. The Warriors are probably the closest thing, but that was more driven by they had a bunch of injuries that ruined 2 seasons for them. And then, then they were able to come back, get back on top in 2022. And now they're trying to they're trying to milk the last whatever's left of that dynastic team here at this point. So I think with Denver, there's absolutely what they could have done was, if you had a sense last year we might lose Caldwell Pope, it's kind of the Minnesota conversation.
Yeah.
Why don't you maybe move them then? But I get it also. They're like, well, we're trying to win a second title. We're trying to be the first repeat champs in, 7 years. I think we're at now in the NBA. So I kind of get where they were like, hey, we were trying to keep it going. For me, where this is less a roster building challenge and more of we use this as our excuse for this to let a guy leave who's really important to us. And now if Christian Brown was like, no brainer, he needs more minutes, he's ready to start, let's go, fine. Then that's how you do it, right? You're developing internally behind your guys. That's how you're able to stay at a nice payroll level. But yeah, and then to your point on Murray, yeah, I feel like we're going to be a couple years out and it's going to be like, man, this is Jokic and a broken down Murray and Aaron Gordon, who's finally he's older now. And, what are we doing here? And it's probably going to be a team that's continually a playoff team because Jokic is that good.
Yeah.
But they're never going to be a contender. And my worry is just the NBA, I feel like more than most other sports, is you're either a contender or you need to be able to get good draft picks and to replenish talent and the like. And I think they're just going to kind of get stuck in the middle.
I guess that's what I meant. This could have been the year where you just, took that Golden State Warriors season, got the number 2 pick, and so you know what I mean?
Yeah,
you could.
It's tough to sell. I think
it's really hard. It's really hard. Yeah.
And now the other thing I wanted to comment on, I'm with you on Jokic. I think he sees out his current contract because I think he's a loyal guy. He's going to do that. I would not be surprised if at the end of that contract, if he's like, okay, I've won a bunch of MVPs, I won at least one title, see you later. I'm going to go race horses. Bye.
Yeah, I think
then
so
we
too.
maybe never see him again unless it's a Nuggets title reunion or something in the States. Like that's it. He just becomes, a horse owner, and that's what he does. Cause it seems like that's what he's happiest doing. And, if that's what he does, I can't blame him. Like he'll be ready for that.
Are Gordon and Porter Jr. getting extensions here?
Oh man, not Porter Jr. I don't think. I think there's enough time left on that contract that they're going to say, let's let this thing play out a little more. I think he's going to become the trade piece.
Okay.
Where he becomes the big tradable salary that allows to rebalance. I do think Gordon will get extended just because I think it's going to be, we can't afford to let another guy go. That one's going to be really important though, that they get it right. And I think that's one where you really probably need to do one of those descending extensions, bite the bullet now, pay a little bit more in the tax in the next year or two, but get that number going down, year over year. Cause I'm not fully sold Aaron Gordon is going to age super well as it goes. His skill game is never rounded out. And I'm afraid as he loses some of his athleticism, he may not look like the same player.
All right. Team 4.
The Lakers contractually, I think obligated anybody who covers the NBA has to talk about the Lakers. But what I want to talk about, which some have talked about, is and they take advantage of LeBron James saying, I'll take a whole bunch less money. As we open training camp, the Los Angeles Lakers lost Spencer Dinwiddie and Taurean Prince. They replaced them with Dalton Knecht and Bronny James, 2 rookies. That's it. That is the sum total of their 15-man standard roster in and out. That's not good enough. You have LeBron James and Anthony Davis, who are superstar level players and should be able to take any reasonably built team into title contention, and it's not going to happen because they're just not good enough. You also came off a year where LeBron and AD were mostly healthy all season long, and that's not going to happen again. Like, why would we believe they're going to both play 60 plus, 70 plus games again? That seems extremely unlikely at their age and injury histories. I feel like the Lakers had a chance to, it was not going to be some super duper blockbuster, incredible move, but you could have done more and had a roster that made a lot more sense. And he was offering to take like 13 million less and take a lot less money to let you build out the team in a way where it was bringing help. And for whatever reason, they just didn't do it. And it's, my co-host Trevor Lane on Front Office Shows, a Lakers guy, and he still is like, I don't understand. And like, we get inundated with Laker fans every day complaining about it, and they're mad. And anytime they lose a game, it's going to be fire everybody. What are we doing? This whole thing's a mess. And it's at this point, it's a little hard to, blame them. It feels like they've completely mismanaged the tail end of the roster building around 2 generational talents.
So they're bringing back the exact same roster outside of some depth pieces plus some rookies. And I assume you believe that Bronny James is going to make this roster out of the start of the season?
Yeah, he's 100%. I mean, they gave him like a guaranteed contract for a couple years. He's going to be on the team. It's I'll even go further. I think if not opening night, within the first week, they're going to get him on the floor with LeBron at the same time, just so it's over and done with. So JJ Redick's not having to answer that question in every press conference. When are we going to see father and son play together? And honestly, do it, right? It's going to be a cool moment. Like I think it's going to be awesome. But yeah, he's going to be on the team, and it's their question is, can at some point they turn D'Angelo Russell, Gabe Vincent, Rui Hachimura, Jared Vanderbilt, can they turn those guys and their contracts into something that is really going to help elevate and lift this team and into a place where they can go from battling for just a spot in the playoffs to trying to make it back to the finals? Because as it is today, this is a team, I don't know that they are up and out of the play-in tournament. They're probably going to be down in that range. So is that the plan? Because they have to have a plan, right? I agree with you that it just seems like they're limping into this, and for LeBron to be offering up his services and financial reduction like that, and then to not have them capitalize on it, is the plan that the off-season moves just weren't there, but the in-season moves will be, and they're just gonna count their ducks for January 5th or whatever it's gonna be? Yeah, I mean, you can't see me right now, but I look like the human version of the shrug emoji. Because I don't know. Like, I don't know what the plan is here, because I would have thought LeBron, it wasn't like LeBron came in at the end of July and was like, all right, I'll take less, get something done. And there's nobody left to get something done with.
No.
Like, everybody signed and moved already. He did it right at the start of free agency, and they still didn't do anything. Like, and that's when, literally, when I say like they did nothing, people are like, well, they must have done something. I'm like, yeah, replace 2 solid veteran rotation guys with 2 rookies. Like, that's it. That's like it sounds like I'm being a Laker hater and, exaggerating, but that really is all they did. And I really don't know. I don't know if the Lakers feel like we're the Lakers, and because it so often has, it'll all just kind of work out and like we'll end up okay. But yeah, my guess is they're going to try to find a trade by the trade deadline in the beginning part of February, but we'll see. I mean, it's tough now because under the new rules, second apron, I think we all kind of know, right? That's the real hammer. But even the first apron, you can't make a trade where you take back more money without hard capping yourself at the first apron. And that's really tricky to work around. It is very hard in the NBA to make trades where one side or the other or both sides, I should say, are taking back the same amount of money. One side or the other is going to get hard capped. And that leaves roughly right now about 2/3 of the league. It's going to be very difficult for them to find trades with each other because of that exact issue of how do we make this work? And that's people are like, well, there must be a buffer. No, there's no buffer. It's got to be matching dollar for dollar. There's not even a $1 buffer on that. It is dollar for dollar. You get hard capped, and that's first apron. That's where the Lakers are living right now. So it's not going to be easy. Would have been far easier to do 3 months ago when the offseason was starting, but here we are, and I don't know where it's going.
I mean, certainly finances were a big part of this because according to your numbers, they're $45,000 under the second apron, right? Which is, that's not an accident. That's accounting 101, right? This is all purposeful. And what, are they just going to wait to see what this roster can do for 3 months and then react to it? And that seems like what the play is here.
Yeah, I think that is. I think they are. We kind of talked about it with the Wolves. Let's see where we're at in January. And if we're awesome, great. We roll forward. But like the Lakers are, I think, taking that same approach. And my thing would be, even if you are awesome, you awesome because LeBron and AD haven't missed any time yet.
Yeah.
Then I just banking on those 2 guys being healthy again. And if they're not healthy for a full season, then there's no point. And that's where I do kind of wonder, is that the plan? Is there, in Rob Pelinka's mindset, I can't say this publicly, but I know I'm not getting another healthy year out of these guys. We're going to take a step back, and there's nothing I can do to fix it if they're not healthy under these current constraints. So why am I going to throw good money after bad? Maybe they are taking the
Nuggets approach
off a little bit, right? Reset without openly saying it, because no one in Lakerland would deal with neither would LeBron, right? He would have been like, then guess what? I'm out of here. Like, I'll go, play somewhere else, because I know he's not there just to pile up stats and play in LA. He still wants to compete and wants to try to win, and he showed us all in the Olympics. He still can, but it's just, I don't know if he can for 82 games in a regular season, plus another 20 plus games in the playoff run.
Can we end on a positive note though here? I really like Dalton Connect.
Yeah, good, really good draft pick for them. I think he's going to be a really good player for the Lakers eventually with time. He's going to get the Laker propaganda machine when he has his first good game, and it's going to be, rookie of the year and everything else. But I do like him. He's going to be a nice player. And they where they're getting him that late in the first round when he looked like he was probably going to be a top 10 pick. That's a terrific value for them.
Exactly. All right, let's finish it up, sir.
All right. We spent a lot of time talking about the aprons and all that. All this apron stuff was designed to destroy the Golden State Warriors, LA Clippers, and what the Brooklyn Nets were becoming. Mission accomplished.
Yep.
Those 3 teams are completely different. Now, the Nets got out in front of it for a whole lot of other reasons. You had James Harden situation fell apart, Kyrie Irving, that whole fiasco, and that ended that. Then Kevin Durant, I want out of here too. But the Nets aren't what the Nets were going to be and what they were, quite frankly, I think, hoping to be. And the Warriors and Clippers aren't the Warriors and Clippers anymore. As it stands right now with those two teams, the Clippers are about $1 million. I apologize. Clippers are just barely into the luxury tax by about $2.5 million, and the Warriors are about $5.8 million. And if you go back a year ago, the ridiculous levels that those teams were, that's remarkable. And they're only there because they made a couple signings that pushed them back into the tax. They were both completely out of the tax and could have stayed there, but there were good value signings that they made and did all that. So that's my way of saying the second apron was designed to, we do not want these teams, especially the Warriors and especially the Clippers. There's 29 other NBA owners that were like, we cannot let Steve Ballmer just spend whatever he wants because we're going to turn into some perverse version of Major League Baseball or the Premier League where his teams are, spending the entire payroll of 3 other teams. And that's where he would have had. And I think Steve Ballmer would have done it because, he makes that money in the amount of time it took me to say this sentence. So he doesn't really, and clearly he loves it and wants to win. So it worked. It worked. Now, I think some of the things they did went a little too far. We talked about it. The whole card capping you at the first apron if you take more money in a trade, that probably needs to be revisited and figured out. But you wanted to knock the really expensive teams down. Now the question will be, what smart team will figure out, well, here's how we make it work in our favor. Here's how we work around these things. Here's how we run as a second apron team for a couple years, then we dip under and we get under and then we come back up. Where is that going to be? How's that going to look? And I guarantee you there's people that are working. That's what they're working on today. So how can we, push, then drop, then we'll push right back in again and we'll go in that direction. So it's going to be a lot of fun watching how this navigates. And I'll add to it, there are teams I know that signed contracts that, because they've told me, they're like, we're going to expand before it's over.
Yeah.
We'll get off the contract that way.
Yeah.
We'll offer the expansion team, hey, we'll give you a first round pick if you'll take this contract off our books. And that way it operates as almost like a pseudo amnesty clause. That might be where the Nuggets were. We're fine with Jamal Murray for 4 years. If year 5 of his total deal here looks terrible, well, we're probably expanding and we could probably sell them off then that way. So that's going to be the other wrinkle that's going to come in along with this that I think is going to make it's just relearning the rules of how you build a roster in the NBA is going to be a lot of fun over the next 3 to 4 year cycle.
All right. That's going to be the title of this podcast, Keith. Jamal Murray to headline expansion team in 2026-27.
Would surprise me. Would not surprise me.
I quickly ran the numbers while you were giving us that breakdown. The last 4 seasons, the collective tax bill for the Golden State Warriors, $626 million. Yeah. So, chump change for these NBA folks.
That's just $500 million money. What's that between friends? It's funny too. I'll say this, I should have said this when we talked about the league as a whole, because we have such incredible tracking on Spot Track. You can go and look. And I went back and looked, and people were like, man, it feels like because of all these max extensions, a lot of other guys didn't get paid, and they're on minimum deals. I'm like, that certainly happened to some players. But you know what? That's happened every year. There's a handful of guys maybe that are on weird contracts. I think some of that's more about the amount of talent that's in the league as much as it is about the spending. But by the time we're done with the last round of rookie extensions and a couple more veteran extensions, we're going to be over $7 billion in new money was added this summer. The NBA is fine. Players are getting paid. Everybody's making a ton of money. The cap growth is we messed around with it and estimated we might have gone up by 40% if they didn't put the cap on this. Who knows what the heck next summer it would have been a mess. Everybody would have been trying to be a free agent if they could, because you would have been talking max contracts. I mean, we're in the lifetime of this CBA, we're going to have somebody who may not be in first year money, but out year money, third year, 3 year, 4, maybe year 5, they're going to be $100 million player. Yeah. That's just where we're going. The league is fine. That's why the league's expanding. That's why they got $7 billion in TV contracts. They're okay. That's why everybody feels like, just spend, because that's what we got to do. So it really was. It felt like it was a muted offseason. We may have a couple more of those because I think extensions are the way. But what does make it fun, especially if maybe they tweak a couple of these trade rules, which I'm not going to rule out, that there's a mid-CBA, we went a little too far, let's adjust, which the NBA has been pretty good about with the MBPA. Trades are going to be the way forward. It's going to be extensions. Guy doesn't like where he is. Team doesn't like the situation they're in. Trades are going to be the way forward. So it'll be as fun as it always. Trades to me are almost more fun than free agency anyway, because you get multiple teams impacted.
Totally.
And everything. So
totally.
I'd rather have more trades.
Half the league right now is over the first tax threshold.
Yep.
And the Phoenix Suns, as you kind of alluded to, are currently set to carry the highest tax bill in the history of the NBA. And I know that they also possess the worst contract in the history of the NBA, according to you, which is Bradley Beal. So
did you follow ESPN's, they ran a little like mini expansion thing?
No.
So they did a thing where they kind of explained the expansion rules. Then they did a mock expansion draft as if it was happening like the end of this season. They got to the end. So two teams had to pick one player from every team. They got to the end, and I think it was Tim Bontemps said the last team. He was the Las Vegas team. He passed rather than take Bradley Beal and take Bradley Beal with a first-round pick. He passed on taking that contract. So now, want to get really nerdy? There's an open question that if Bradley Beal is still under contract when expansion happens, can he use his no trade clause to block being
to be excluded
expansion draft?
Yeah.
The letter of the way everything was written. Now, here's the funny thing about the CBA. You look up in the CBA expansion and it says refer to the last CBA, all the way back to the 1995 CBA. Literally, that's what it says, is refer back to this one, which then says refer back to this one all the way back to 1995, which was the Raptors Grizzlies when they really last kind of redefined the expansion rules. But they changed the no trade clause rules to specifically address trade versus assignment. So I think somebody somewhere knew we got to take assignment out of this, because assignment would be he's being assigned to a new team through the expansion draft. So we'll see. My guess is that's going to be a fun little fight. Maybe we get into some arbitration there, but that's I had to end with a real nerdy topic there because it's something I'm fired up for.
That's an all-timer. Phoenix is stuck, right? That's how we leave this. They're stuck.
They could pivot if Kevin Durant changes his mind, if things aren't going the way they want. You could pivot fairly quickly. He could still return you a massive package in return via trade. We know the Houston Rockets had interest. They purposely went out and acquired a whole bunch of the Suns picks from the Brooklyn Nets in exchange for giving the Nets their own picks back. So you could see a pivot there, but yeah, it's probably we got to let things play out. At least with Beal, I don't see that one getting traded again, and I also don't see him being open to another trade. He took him a long time to get him to be even open to thinking about leaving Washington. I don't know that he's going to want to do it again this late in his career. But yeah, I mean, you could see him pivot and try to rebuild it up around Devin Booker, but we'll see. I know their hope is to have a better year. Let's get everybody happy and at least justify some level of this massive expenditure we have, roster and tax penalties.
All right, Jamal Murray to Vegas and Kevin Durant to the Lakers. We've solved everything. We did it.
There it is. Yeah.
We did it. Everybody's happy.
Fast forward 3 years or so.
Keith, you're the best. Good luck with everything, man.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.